From the Weather NorCal Command Center, this is your morning update.
Happy Thursday morning to you. It was a little wet out there last night, mainly cloudy skies, a few sprinkles, some light showers overnight. Things are quieting down this morning before the last pulse kind of pushes on through. That's going to bring us more rain. Take a look at some of the rainfall totals we've seen over the last 3 days. Pretty impressive. Look at southern Humboldt County around Redway. Over 4 inches of rain there. Almost 2.5 inches in Crescent City, almost 2 inches in Eureka, over 2 inches in Hoopa. Now, you see the footprint of the yellows and oranges. That's where we typically see the most amount of rainfall for these types of events, north and west of the valley, and also in the foothills east of the valley. And then we tend to see a lot less as you start heading into Modoc County, Lassen, and eastern Plumas County. But even the valley, on average, about 1 inch of rainfall, just depending on where you are. The most, as expected, was up in Redding at 1.38 inches of rain. We'll take it. All right, so one more cool and wet day for most of Northern California. I say that because not everyone's going to see the rain today. It's not until this evening and tonight. Dry and warmer Friday and this weekend. Dry and mild start to next week, but sometime around the middle to latter part of next week, I'm beginning to see the potential for some more cooler and wet weather moving on in. All right, so here is a look at your Krueger's Quickcast for your Thursday, November 6th. You're going to wake up this morning, and it's going to be a little overcast out there. But overall, it's dry. There may be a sprinkle here and there. There may be some drizzle, some sprinkles out towards the north coast. But the bulk of any rain is going to hold off until late this morning and afternoon for most of us. And again, we'll take a closer look at that here in a second. But there you can see the cold front that's off to our west. We have what we call a zonal flow type pattern, and that's just a fast flow of the jet stream from west to east. And that's just transporting those clouds and that moisture our way. So that cold front will be pushing through, and that's what's going to really help to generate some of the showers that we do see this afternoon. All right, so let's take a look at the HRRR forecast model. All right, here we are at about midday. Not as aggressive as our in-house forecast model, but you know, that's kind of the overall trend here. It looks like it's trending more towards the north than it is to the south. But we can see the showers moving in around late morning, midday. Then another little stronger pulse comes through sometime this afternoon for the coast. And I think eventually the valley getting caught up in some of that, the north end of the valley. So Redding, maybe Red Bluff. Sometime around mid-afternoon, I think you'll start to see some of the showers, and especially in the late afternoon hours. But you can see the rain is a little bit heavier off to the north-northwest later on this evening and even into tonight. And then that moves out. By tomorrow, we're done with this. Now, the wind's still a bit gusty. If you're driving a high-profile vehicle, just note that on I-5 today, the winds will be pretty gusty. I mean, you can see those reds indicating upwards of 40 to 50 miles per hour, and gusty elsewhere to the north as well. But then the wind should start to subside as we do go into this evening and into tonight. All right, so here's your forecast for your Thursday. So we're going to be looking at most of the rain kind of kicking in first for the coast. Then eventually this afternoon for places like Siskiyou County, mid-afternoon for the north end of the valley. And then it looks like maybe even Modoc County seeing some of those showers by around midday, early afternoon. But this evening, southern end of the valley, places like many of the eastern mountains, probably going to have to wait until this evening into tonight. All right, so let's go and take a look at our forecast for the next 7 days. It's dry for Friday. Now, if you watched my evening forecast, there were raindrops for Wednesday. Now the forecast models are kind of backing off on that timing. So we still have to iron out the details when it comes to the timing of next week's rain. But as it stands right now, it looks like we're going to see it sometime around the middle to latter part of next week. But in the meantime, beautiful weather in store for us, especially for the weekend. Temperatures getting warmer, and we'll start off a little bit warmer towards the beginning of next week as well. All right, that is a look at your Krueger's Quickcast. We're now going to take a look at our deeper dive forecast. We're really going to dive deep into that forecast, sponsored by Shasta Hearing Aids.
Frank, come help with the dishes.
What?
The dishes!
I heard it the first time. I just got back from Shasta Hearing Aids, but she doesn't know it yet. What?
Forget it.
Well, we do have that rain that we saw a little bit of that rain here in those overnight hours here, but overall, just not a lot of rain here overnight. This is looking at the last 6 hours, just a few stray sprinkles, a few light showers. Now this morning, a lot of this activity has pretty much dried out. So what you'll notice is we've got this cold front right here. It's moving very rapidly, and the reason why it's moving so fast is because you'll notice this is the jet stream right here. This is what we call a zonal flow type pattern. This is when we have a very fast flow from west to east. And so you have these disturbances within that flow sometimes, like we do now, and that's what's going to help to transport that moisture over us and eventually bring many of us the rain. Now, we've seen a lot of rainfall for the North Coast and even the coastal range here over the last few days. The ground is saturated. It's having a hard time really just soaking up any more moisture. So as a result, any rain we see on top of that is going to run off fairly quickly. So there's a potential that we could see some flash flooding in some of the areas shaded in dark green because of the amount of rainfall that we've seen over the last several days. All right, so this morning we're starting off fairly dry with mostly cloudy skies. There's that first pulse. There's actually going to be 2 pulses of moisture that'll be pushing through. So by around late morning, midday, we see that first pulse hit through to the north and west. And really overall, even when we looked at the HRRR forecast model, this is where it looked like most of it was. So eastern Siskiyou, Modoc, everywhere else looking fairly dry at this point. Okay, then we go into the afternoon, and you can see that first pulse then pushes through Modoc County through the afternoon, Siskiyou County as well, and eventually by around mid to late afternoon, we start to see some light showers entering the north end of the valley. Now here's that second pulse of moisture I was talking about that's going to be coming in late in the day today. This one's focused a little bit more to the south. Right, so the first pulse was up to our north. That's why it's staying fairly dry to the south. But the second pulse right here, that's focused a little bit more to the south. And then that's going to be pushing through even parts of the south end of the valley. So by 10 o'clock tonight, overnight, into early tomorrow morning, eventually everyone else getting caught up in some light rain. Nothing terribly heavy. But look at this. By Friday morning, we are dry. We're going to see those clouds really part and break apart as we go into Friday afternoon. Mostly sunny skies by the second half of the day on Friday. And that's going to translate into your weekend and even early next week as well. So how much rain can we expect out of this? These 2 pulses that are coming through today? Well, as we'd expect, right, it's mainly to the north and west that we're seeing the bulk of the rain. I think we'll be lucky to get 1/4 of an inch in Redding. It just depends on how far that first pulse comes through, how far south that goes, but not very much is expected for most of the valley or even off to the east. All right, so let's take a look at what's going on. Can we expect more rain next week? Well, let's take a look at what we expect for the weekend. High pressure will be the dominant feature, and that's really starting to build in as we go through Friday, but Saturday, Sunday will be more prominent, and it'll be a little bit warmer as well. So you can see all this activity to the west, but it's butting up against that ridge like a brick wall. But what we've got, and I got my eyes on a couple of things, some development. This area of low pressure right here, they're going to kind of join forces and should move eastward. Now the timing of when this arrives, still a little uncertainty. The forecast model is still kind of ironing out those details. But both the European and the GFS are kind of backing off on how early it comes. So it looks like more like around Thursday of next week that we got the potential for some wet weather. But it's one of those stay tuned type of situations because it may be here as early as Wednesday. But for now, I've taken the chance out of for rain out for Wednesday and then pushing that back to Thursday. There you can see the winds. Now, I just want to bring this up because if you drive a high-profile vehicle, central Siskiyou County, it's going to be pretty gusty in Shasta Valley there, right? But also pretty gusty off to the north here along the coast. Pretty gusty as well. Not as bad for the valley, maybe a little breezy, but the wind should subside here later on this evening and tonight, and I don't expect the winds to be an issue as we go into Friday or even through the weekend. So your 10-day trend with your temperatures, still another cool day. We transition on Friday back to the 70s by Saturday, Sunday, even into early next week, and then temperatures start to dip again towards the middle and latter part of next week. That's the sign of that cooler and wetter trend going towards the middle and latter part of next week. Lake levels, check this out. Because of the rain, we're actually seeing some of the lake levels rise, like Shasta Lake, right? Look at that, almost a foot. increase. Hey, we'll take it. 0.35 out towards Trinity Lake, and Lake Oroville actually has seen a decrease there. But that's a sign. That's a good sign, because now we're getting more into that wet season, and hopefully we can start getting these lakes to fill back up again, because that's what we do, right? We fill them up in the winter season, and then the snow melts as we go into spring. We use that water so the lakes begin to drop, and then it's that perfect little cycle that we can hopefully get, especially when we see these wet winters. All right, do want to mention, outside of the rain, we've got high astronomical tides for the coast and high surf. And those are perfect ingredients for us to see some flooding along the coast here. A lot of the low-lying areas and typical areas that see street flooding, just note that. And the time frame of this is most likely to be between 10 a.m. and 1 p.m. So just be aware of that as you go through your day, and especially if you live along the coast. Some of those typical areas may see some of that flooding. So the wave heights, yeah, they're getting pretty high today. They're going to stay fairly high to the first half of the day on Friday, but should start to show signs of dropping a bit for the second half of the day tomorrow. Winds, yeah, still a little gusty out there, 20 to 25 knots. There's your waves. And there's a hazardous seas warning this morning that should be allowed to expire later this afternoon, but we'll see. All right, let's take a look at your neighborhood forecast, sponsored in part by Dignity Health. You've got temperatures in Trinity County in the mid to upper 50s. There's that wet weather coming in by around midday. All right, and then dry for Friday through the weekend and through at least the beginning of next week, maybe even into Wednesday. Your Dignity Health North Coast neighborhood forecast, and really across the board, it's going to be dry Friday through at least Tuesday, Wednesday of next week, and also warmer across the board as we go into the weekend. Your Dignity Health Siskiyou County neighborhood forecast. Temperatures today still cool. We're talking mid-50s, give or take, although places like Tennant only about 48 for that date for your daytime high. For Modoc County, we take a look at temperatures in the low 50s for your daytime highs, getting close to 70 by Sunday, Monday of next week. Your Eastern Mountains neighborhood forecast, temperatures mid to upper 50s. Showers later this evening, but I'll say this, this afternoon, showers here, maybe even around Chester, Westwood. This evening tonight, probably for the rest of the Eastern Mountains. So it just depends on where you are. Here's your Dignity Health Valley neighborhood forecast. There you can see temperatures in the mid-60s. So it's warming up a little bit to the south, and partially because I do expect to see some more breaks in the clouds that may allow us to warm up a little bit warmer than the north end of the valley, where the clouds will probably stick around through most of the day. There you can see those temperatures in the low to mid-70s for Saturday, Sunday, Monday. That'll probably continue into your Tuesday as well, your Veterans Day, as a matter of fact. I'm keeping it dry through Wednesday. There's your Valley neighborhood forecast to the north. So as I mentioned, maybe a little bit cooler because I think the clouds will kind of stick around a little bit longer. 56 out towards Whiskeytown, 56 for Lakehead, and 62 degrees for Palisadro. All right, there's your 7-day forecast for Redding. Temperatures back in the mid to upper 70s by the weekend, keeping that way for Monday, Tuesday, and your Veterans Day. Keeping it dry for Wednesday, but again, it's sometime around Wednesday, Thursday that we may start to see some showers entering the picture. All right, that's your morning update. I'll be back again at noon for the latest check of your weather. Have a great morning.